Samantha Vance's bachelorette party was out of control. In the video, she was sitting on a stranger's lap, two buttons of her silk blouse popped open, laughing into her phone as she cooed, "I miss you." The sender was her maid of honor, Nikki. "Ethan," Sam said at the mandatory rite of passage for saying goodbye to the single life. I hit send, dropping the screenshot of the canceled venue contract into the group chat. The wedding is off. No need to worry about gifts. Ethan Hayes' phone screen cut through the darkness of his home office, a pale bolt of lightning splitting the heavy silence. He had just wrapped up an overseas video conference, and the screen's blue light still burned behind his eyes. A cold tide of exhaustion was slowly seeping into his bones. Tomorrow was supposed to be his wedding day. On the corner of his desk, a stack of gold-embossed invitations served as a silent testament to the grand ceremony that was no longer happening. He rubbed his throbbing temples, his fingertips sliding across the cool glass of his phone. A new notification had appeared from a contact saved as Nikki, Sam's friend. It wasn't a text. It was a video file. Ethan's brow furrowed almost imperceptibly. At this hour? He tapped it open. A wave of deafening music shattered the office's tranquility. A cheap nightclub beat thumping with an irritating rhythm. The camera was shaky, the lighting dim and hazy as multicolored spotlights swept across faces distorted by alcohol and hype. And at the center of it all was Samantha. She was wearing the same delicate silk blouse she'd had on when Ethan saw her off that morning. Now it was wrinkled and stuck to her skin. The top two buttons had come undone, revealing a startling patch of skin and the faint edge of lace. She was perched on a strange man's lap, her long hair spilling over her shoulders, her face flushed with a drunken, almost wanton smile that Ethan had never seen before. She was surrounded by a few familiar faces, Nikki, Chloe, and Megan, Samantha's so-called best friends. They were screaming, clapping, and egging her on, their phone cameras practically glued to Samantha's face. "Sam, truth or dare? Pick one." Nikki's sharp voice, thick with a forced excitement, cut through the music. "Dare. You think I'm scared of you?" Samantha threw her head back and chugged from a glass, liquor dribbling from the corner of her mouth. Her eyes, hazy and unfocused, scanned the group before landing on the man whose lap she occupied, a look of raw provocation in her gaze. "Yes, that's my girl." Chloe slammed her hand on the table, her voice cracking with exhilaration. "See your phone? Call the last man you spoke to. On speaker. You have to say, 'I miss you.' And it has to be convincing, or it doesn't count. Do it. Call him. Now." Megan chimed in, laughing, her eyes glued to Samantha, eagerly waiting for the show to begin. Samantha giggled, shifting restlessly in the stranger's arms as if thrilled by the dare. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers clumsy with alcohol as they swiped across the screen. After a few seconds, she found her target, jabbed the screen, and then triumphantly flashed it at her cheering friends before hitting the speakerphone button. Beep, beep, beep. The monotonous dial tone was unnervingly clear against the chaotic background noise, like a cold needle poking at Ethan's eardrums. His left hand, resting on the desk, curled into a fist, his knuckles turning white from the pressure. In the video, Samantha pressed the phone back to her ear, her body still nestled against the man. She turned her head slightly and, in a cloyingly sweet, drawn-out voice, purred into the receiver, "Hey, yeah, it's me. No reason. I miss you." "Whoa, that's hot. Sam, you're a legend." The friends erupted in a new wave of screams and whistles as the camera zoomed in, shakily capturing every detail of Samantha's intoxicated expression and the stranger's hand wrapped around her waist. The video ended. The screen went dark, reflecting Ethan's blank face. The office was dead silent, save for the heavy, slow, and distinct rhythm of his own heart, which, after a brief pause, began to pound against his ribs. The sound was amplified in the absolute quiet, making his ears ring. A moment later, Nikki's text popped up. "Ethan, see that? Sam's living up. She said it's a mandatory rite of passage. We couldn't stop her. Don't worry. We're watching her. She won't do anything too crazy." LOL, winking face with thumb. Every word burned into his retina like a branding iron. A rite of passage? Couldn't stop her? Won't do anything too crazy. He stared at the message for a full 10 seconds. Then he moved. There was no furious roar, no sound of things being smashed. His movements were almost unnervingly calm. He unlocked his phone, his fingers moving with speed and precision across the cold glass. He found a contact for the venue manager at the hotel. "Hello, Mr. Davis." Ethan's voice was as steady and placid as a deep, frozen lake. "This is Ethan Hayes. I'm calling to inform you that the wedding reception scheduled for tomorrow at 11 a.m. in the Crystal Ballroom is canceled, effective immediately. All associated costs are to be charged to the card on file, as per the cancellation clause in our contract. Yes, everything. My lawyer will be in touch regarding any further details. He could hear the manager's shocked questions on the other end, but he simply hung up. Next, he opened the group chat named Ethan and Sam's Wedding Crew. It included Samantha, Nikki, Chloe, Megan, and a handful of close family and friends from both sides. Just hours ago, it had been flooded with messages of congratulations and excitement for the wedding. Ethan's finger hovered over the screen for a second before he opened his photo gallery and selected the screenshot he had just saved, the electronic confirmation of the cancel hotel contract. The word canceled was stamped across it in a glaring red font. He sent the image. Then, he typed a single line, each word like a shard of ice. The wedding is off. No need to worry about gifts. He hit send. With that done, Ethan placed his phone face down on the cold mahogany desk with a soft, muffled thud. He leaned back into the plush leather of his chair, tilted his head back, and closed his eyes. The light from the overhead fixture was harsh, casting a throbbing, blood-red shadow behind his closed eyelids. The heavy, slow beat of his heart seemed to grow louder, a destructive force silently washing away the foundations of the last 5 years. Tomorrow, there would be no wedding. The moment Ethan's phone hit the desk, it was as if a detonator had been triggered. After a brief, suffocating silence, the Ethan and Sam's Wedding Crew group chat exploded. Samantha's mother was the first to react, firing off a series of frantic voice messages. Ethan, what is wrong with you? What does this screenshot mean? Cancel. Is this some kind of sick joke? The caterer just confirmed the menu with me. You explain yourself right now. Where's Samantha? Samantha, say something. Next was one of Ethan's cousins, his text betraying a mix of shock and panic. Ethan, what's going on? What happened? This isn't something to joke about. We have hundreds of guests coming tomorrow. Do your parents know about this? At Ethan, dude, did you post this in the wrong chat? This is not funny. That was one of Samantha's cousins. Ethan, what the hell do you think you're doing? Delete that message. Now, Samantha's father had joined in, his words few but filled with a commanding rage. The messages flew in like a broken dam. Questions, shock, anger, and desperate attempts at intervention flooded the screen, a chaotic mix of text and voice notes threatening to crash the app. But the two people at the center of the storm, Ethan and Samantha, remained eerily silent. Ethan's phone lay face down, insulated from the chaos. And across town, in the VIP room of a flashy nightclub, the deafening music had long since died, replaced by a heart-stopping silence. The drunken flush had vanished from Samantha's face the moment she saw the group chat, leaving behind a bloodless, ashen pallor. Her hand trembled so badly she could barely hold her phone. On the screen, Ethan's message declaring the wedding off and the glaring cancellation screenshot were like two white-hot knives twisting in her gut. No, that's impossible, she muttered, her voice shaking uncontrollably. She snapped her head up to look at Nikki, whose face was just as pale. Nikki, what? What is this? What does he mean? Nikki was completely stunned. She looked from the video she'd sent Ethan to the cold, final declaration in the group chat, and a chill shot up her spine. She had just wanted to share the fun, to needle Ethan a little, to show him that Samantha wasn't just his for the taking, that her best friend was in high demand. She never imagined his reaction would be so terrifying. He hadn't just gotten angry. He had burned the whole thing to the ground. I don't know, Sam. Nikki's voice was on the verge of tears, laced more with fear than anything else. I sent him a video. As a joke. How was I supposed to know he couldn't take a joke? He's insane. A video? What video? Samantha grabbed Nikki's arm, her nails digging into her flesh. Her voice shot up, sharp and bordering on a hysterical shriek. What did you send him? Tell me now. Chloe and Megan huddled closer, their faces masks of panic and confusion. They were beginning to realize that their out-of-control party game had just caused a catastrophe of epic proportions. The pain from Samantha's grip, mixed with her own panic, sent Nikki scrambling. She fumbled with her phone, pulled up the video and the message she had sent, and shoved it in front of Samantha's face. The dare you just did. I just sent it to him. I told him. It was a rite of passage. How was I supposed to know he'd? Samantha only needed to see the video's thumbnail, of herself, straddling a stranger, her clothes in disarray, for her mind to go blank. A roar filled her ears, as if something inside her had just exploded. The world tilted, and she staggered, nearly collapsing. Nikki, you bitch, you've ruined my life. Samantha let out a piercing scream and shoved Nikki away. She grabbed her purse and bolted from the room like a madwoman, the desperate clicks of her heels echoing on the polished floor. "Sam, where are you going?" Chloe and Megan shouted, trying to stop her. "Get away from me," Samantha shrieked, tears finally breaking free and streaming down her face. Her mind was consumed by a single thought: find Ethan. Explain everything. It was just a game. A dare. He can't do this. He can't cancel the wedding. She burst out of the club, and the cold night air hit her like a slap, doing nothing to cool the fire of panic burning in her chest. With trembling hands, she dialed Ethan's number again and again. Beep, beep, beep. The busy signal. Cold, monotonous, and unending. Each tone was a hammer blow against the fragile walls of her sanity. Refusing to give up, she switched to WhatsApp, frantically sending him voice notes, texts, and video call requests. "Ethan, answer your phone. Let me explain. It was just a game. They were all egging me on. I was drunk. It wasn't real. Please, answer the phone. We can't cancel the wedding. I love you. I only love you. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. Please just say something. I'm begging you." Her tearful, incoherent, and desperate messages were like stones dropped into a bottomless ocean, met with absolute silence. The man who had once been so attentive and gentle, who would have done anything for her, had become a silent, immovable iceberg, deflecting all her pleas and explanations. Samantha slumped against a cold brick wall, her body sliding to the grimy sidewalk. The expensive fabric of her dress was ruined, but she didn't notice. She hugged her knees to her chest, burying her face as her shoulders shook with violent, suppressed sobs, the sound of her hopeless weeping swallowed by the empty street. It was over. Everything was over. She knew it with a terrifying clarity. Ethan's silence was far more frightening than any angry tirade. It was the silence of a heart that had been completely and irrevocably shut down. Across the city, the light in Ethan's office was still on. He remained in his chair, his eyes closed, as if he had fallen asleep. But his right hand, resting on the armrest, was now clenched into a tight fist, the veins on the back of his hand bulging. The knuckles were white from the strain, emitting a faint, sickening cracking sound. On the desk, his face-down phone vibrated continuously, inching its way across the polished wood. The faint light leaking from its edges illuminated the hard, cold line of his jaw. The light in Ethan's office stayed on all night. As the first gray light of dawn bled into the sky, he slowly opened his eyes. They were shot with red, but his gaze was sharp and clear, honed by a sleepless night into a cold, piercing clarity. The night of silence had not diluted his anger. It had condensed it, turning the slow-burning fire in his chest into something colder, harder, and more real. He picked up the phone from his desk, which had long since fallen silent. He unlocked it to a screen flooded with red notifications, countless missed calls, and unread messages. Most were from Samantha, interspersed with frantic inquiries from their parents, relatives, and friends. His face was a mask of indifference as he scrolled past them, not pausing on a single one. He went straight to his contacts, found the number for Mr. Miller, lawyer, and dialed. The call was answered almost immediately by a calm, professional voice. "Mr. Hayes? It's early. Mr. Miller, my apologies for the hour." Ethan's voice was gravelly, but his thoughts were perfectly organized. "My wedding has been canceled. I need you to handle a few things for me." "Canceled?" The lawyer's surprise was evident, but he quickly regained his composure. "Understand. Please go on. First, I want to immediately initiate legal proceedings against Ms. Samantha Vance to recover all financial gifts given in contemplation of marriage. That includes cash, jewelry, the value of adding her name to my condo's title, and all wedding-related expenses paid by my family or me. I'll email you a detailed list with receipts shortly." Ethan's tone was level, as if he were discussing a business deal gone sour. "Second, I want you to file to freeze the asset at the Pinnacle, apartment 1701B, which was to be our marital home. Prevent Ms. Vance and her family from accessing, selling, or transferring it in any way. She has the keys and key cards. If necessary, get a court order to have the locks changed. Third, I need you to collect all available evidence from last night, or rather, this morning around midnight, concerning Samantha's bachelorette party at the Vibe nightclub. Focus on any videos or photos of her, primarily from Nikki Chun, Chloe Davis, and Megan Riley." The lawyer was silent for a few seconds, processing the sudden, information-heavy instructions. "Mr. Hayes, I understand your feelings. However, the return of such gifts can be complex, especially if she claims you were cohabitating or—" "We were not cohabitating." Ethan cut him off, his tone absolute. The condo renovations were completed less than 3 months ago. She stayed over occasionally, but never officially lived there. All expenses are clearly documented. As for the evidence, he paused, his voice turning colder. I will provide it. You just ensure the legal process is airtight and the recovery is maximized. Understood, Mr. Miller said, asking no more questions. I'll get started immediately. Regarding the evidence, particularly the video, we'll need to be careful about its origin and legality. I know. Just move forward with the legal filings. With that, Ethan ended the call. He set the phone down and walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window. The morning light outlined his tall, solitary figure. He watched the city below slowly wake up, the streets filling with cars and pedestrians hurrying to their destinations. The world was moving on as if the aborted wedding was nothing more than a speck of dust. But for him, this was just the beginning. Canceling the wedding was just hitting the pause button. The real reckoning was about to begin. Nikki, Chloe, Megan, and Samantha. None of them were getting away. He needed something more direct, more efficient, something that would hit them where it hurt them most. The law was his foundation, his safety net, but to make them truly understand the meaning of pain, he needed to employ a few additional measures. Ethan returned to his desk and opened his laptop. The screen's cold glow illuminated his emotionless face. He logged into a highly secure, multi-factor authenticated cloud drive. It was filled with neatly organized files, mostly business-related backups, but one inconspicuous folder was labeled Associates Contingency. He clicked it open. Inside were several subfolders, each bearing the name of one of Samantha's friends, Nikki, Chloe, and Megan. This was information he had passively absorbed over the past few years, details he'd noticed and saved. As a man who valued control and risk management, things he'd once filed away out of habit were about to become his sharpest weapons. He opened Nikki's folder first. It contained a few photos from the grand opening of her trendy cafe, Nikki's Bites, which Samantha had dragged him to. There were also screenshots from Nikki's social media, where she'd bragged about the cafe's earnings, with key numbers blurred out, though Ethan had clearer versions. And then there was the key item, a digital memo detailing conversation where Nikki had boasted to Samantha about keeping 2 sets of books to creatively minimize her taxes, running a significant amount of cash through her personal accounts. Ethan's eyes lingered on the note about the 2 sets of books. His gaze was ice. He picked up his phone, but didn't dial. Instead, he composed a text message to a contact he rarely used, but who was absolutely reliable and well-connected, the son of an old family friend who held a senior position at the IRS. The message was brief. David, apologies for the early text. I have a credible tip to report. Nikki's Bites, owner Nikki Chun, is suspected of significant tax evasion, including keeping 2 sets of books. The evidence is solid. I'll have a formal, anonymous report filed shortly. Thought you'd want a heads up. Ethan Hayes. He hit send. Next, he opened Chloe's folder. Chloe had recently married a quiet, unassuming programmer named Mark. There wasn't much in her folder, just a screenshot from Chloe's Instagram from a few months before her wedding. She was complaining about her fiancé being boring and unromantic. The accompanying photo was of her and another man in a dimly lit bar, his arms slung casually over her shoulder in an intimate pose. The caption read, "Some people just get to miss the old days." Ethan recognized the man, Chloe's ex-boyfriend, a notorious player. Samantha had gossiped about it at the time, mentioning that Chloe was still in touch with her ex right before the wedding and had even sent him some flirty voice messages. Ethan's fingers tapped lightly on the desk. He opened a professional audio editing program and retrieved a recording from a deep backup file on his cloud drive. It was a fragment of a long phone call between Samantha and Chloe, which Samantha had accidentally recorded. In the clip, Chloe's voice was crystal clear as she reenacted a suggestive voice note she'd sent to her ex. "Hey you, stranger. Thinking of me now? Is your wife not doing it for you? You miss me? I miss the way you smell." Samantha had thought it was hilarious and played it for Ethan, then forgot to delete it. Ethan isolated the audio clip and saved it. Then, using an untraceable number and an anonymous email address, he sent the recording, along with a screenshot of Chloe and her ex, to her husband Mark's work email. The subject line was 2 cold, simple words: listen. Finally, he opened Megan's folder. Megan was a planning director at a competitive advertising agency, Insight Creative. She was currently pouring all her energy into landing a career-making account, the annual marketing campaign for a luxury real estate development called Azure Cove. Her folder contained only one document, a memo of bits and pieces Ethan had overheard from a business acquaintance. It mentioned that Insight Creative's biggest rival, Momentum Media, was determined to win the Azure Cove account, and that its CEO was very close with a key decision-maker on the client's side. Ethan's gaze locked onto the names Momentum Media and Key Decision Maker. He thought for a moment, then picked up his phone and dialed another number. This time, his tone was businesslike and detached. Mr. Peterson, good morning. It's Ethan Hayes. I have a small piece of information that might be helpful in your bid for the Azure Cove project. Yes, I happen to catch wind of some key strategic elements of Insight Creative's pitch. Quite specific. Think nothing of it, just returning a favor. I'll send the details to your private email. Of course. Good talking to you. After hanging up, Ethan compiled a carefully edited document containing only the core creative concepts and key pricing strategies from Megan's pitch. Information Megan had boasted about to Samantha, who had then related to Ethan, who had quietly filed it away. He sent it to Mr. Peterson, the CEO of Momentum Media. Once that was done, Ethan closed his laptop. The office returned to silence. He walked to the bar cart, poured a glass of ice water, and drank in one go. The cold liquid was a fleeting shock to his system. This was only the beginning. He looked out the window. The sky was bright now. The sunlight was sharp, but it couldn't penetrate the chill in his eyes. Samantha and her dear friends, are you ready to face the consequences of your rite of passage? Nikki was jolted awake by a frantic, insistent banging on her apartment door, so loud it sounded like someone was trying to break it down. Her head throbbed with a hangover, a dull ache split her temples. Annoyed, she muttered and rolled over, pulling the covers over her head to block out the noise. Who is it? It's the crack of dawn. Go away, she yelled, her voice hoarse. Open up. IRS. Nikki-chun, open the door. A stern, authoritative male voice cut through the door, sharp and unwavering. IRS. The word sliced through Nikki's hangover-induced fog, jolting her awake. She shot up in bed, her heart seizing as if clamped by an icy hand. A cold dread, like a venomous snake, slithered up her spine. She scrambled out of bed, threw on a robe, and ran barefoot to the door, her hands trembling as she peered through the peephole. 3 grim-faced men in dark blue uniforms stood outside. The one in the lead held up a badge. It's over. Nikki's mind went blank. The one thing she had always feared was happening. The 2 sets of books, the cash deposits, all the little tricks she thought were so clever and foolproof. Her legs gave way as she fumbled with the lock and opened the door. Ms. Nikki-chun. The lead agent flashed his badge, his tone cold and official. We're from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. We've received a credible report and have performed a preliminary verification indicating that your business, Nikki's Bites, is involved in significant tax evasion. We are here to conduct a search of your business premises and residence. Here is the warrant. Please cooperate. I. Nikki's face was ashen. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. She watched as the other agents began to move through her cafe, inspecting the cash register and computers, heading directly for the locked drawer where she kept her private ledger. She felt the blood rush to her head and then drain away, leaving her ice cold. No, wait, you have to listen to me, she pleaded, trying feebly to stop them, her voice cracking. Someone set me up. It was Ethan. That bastard Ethan Hayes reported me. It's because of last night. Ms. Chun, please cooperate with the investigation. The agent cut her off, his professional demeanor an impenetrable wall. You can address any issues with your lawyer or make a statement at the conclusion of our investigation. For now, please hand over all ledgers, receipts, bank records, and electronic devices, including your personal ones. Nikki stared at the list the agent handed her. She watched as her trendy little cafe, her pride and joy, was torn apart. She saw the terrified, yet strangely judgmental, looks on her employees' faces. The immense weight of fear and despair finally crushed her. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed, sliding down the doorframe onto the cold floor. Burying her face in her hands, she let out a gut-wrenching, hysterical sob. My cafe. It's over. It's all over. Ethan, Samantha, you've ruined my life. Meanwhile, in a quiet residential neighborhood across town, Chloe's husband, Mark, a mild-mannered programmer with black-framed glasses, sat silently at the breakfast table. His face was grim, his eyes bloodshot. The coffee and bagel in front of him were untouched. Chloe emerged from the bedroom with dark circles under her eyes, looking exhausted from the previous night's stress and alcohol. Seeing her husband's expression, her stomach dropped. She forced a placating smile. Morning, honey. I had to work late last night. I didn't want to wake you when I got in. She tried to deflect with her usual excuse. Mark didn't look up. He didn't respond. He simply picked up his phone, unlocked it, opened his email, and then turned the screen toward Chloe, slamming it down on the table. The sharp crack echoed in the quiet morning air. Chloe flinched. Her eyes instinctively went to the screen. When she saw the photo of herself and her ex-boyfriend, intimately close in the dim light of a bar, and the prominent audio file icon below it, the color drained from her face. Her lips started to tremble. "Mark, honey, let me explain. That's from a long time ago," she stammered, reaching for the phone. Mark snatched it back and tapped the screen. Suddenly, Chloe's own voice, sultry, suggestive, and full of flirtatious intimacy, filled the small kitchen. "Hey, you stranger. Thinking of me now? Is your wife not doing it for you? You miss me? I miss the way you smell." Every word was a poison-tipped needle, stabbing into Chloe's ears and piercing the last remnants of Mark's trust. He listened to his wife use a tone she had never used with him to say such vile things to another man, his body trembling with a mixture of pure rage and humiliation. "No, Mark, listen to me." Chloe panicked, lunging for the phone. It was a dare. They made me record it. It wasn't real. I swear, it was Nikki and the girls." "Dare." Mark finally looked up, his eyes red behind his glasses, staring at Chloe with a cold, unfamiliar look full of the pain of utter betrayal. "Chloe, do you take me for an idiot? That voice, that tone. And you're telling me it was a game? You miss his smell? Huh." He shot to his feet, the legs of his chair screeching against the floor. He pointed a trembling finger at her. "I'm the idiot here. The complete fool you've been playing all this time. Marriage. I was thinking about having kids with you. What a joke. We're done, Chloe. I want a divorce. I can't stand to be in the same house as you for one more day." "No, Mark, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," Chloe cried, throwing herself at his feet and grabbing his leg. "It was them. It was Samantha. It was that stupid party. Please, just forgive me this one time. Just this once." Mark violently shook her off, the force sending her stumbling to the floor. Without a second glance, he grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, snatched his phone from the table, and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind him. Bang! The sound of the door was like a death knell ringing in Chloe's ears. She lay crumpled on the cold floor, staring at the empty doorway, listening to her husband's footsteps fade away. A tidal wave of panic and regret consumed her. Her marriage, she knew, was over, all because of a stupid game, because of Nikki's goading, because of her own pathetic vanity and recklessness. "Nikki, Samantha, I hope you both rot in hell," she screamed, pounding her fists on the floor in a fit of despair. Megan Riley practically sprinted through the doors of the Insight Creative Agency. She hadn't slept either, and the dark circles under her eyes were prominent, but she forced herself into a state of hyper-alert professionalism. Today was the final pitch for the Azure Cove project. This multi-million-dollar account was the final stepping stone to her making partner at the firm. She and her team had poured countless sleepless nights and all their energy into this proposal. She walked briskly toward her office, the clicks of her heels on the floor a tense, rapid rhythm. As she passed the main open-plan workspace, she sensed a strange atmosphere. Coworkers were stealing glances at her, whispering to each other, their eyes a mixture of pity and suspicion. They quickly looked away when she met their gaze. A knot formed in Megan's stomach. A sense of foreboding crept over her. She picked up her pace. The moment she pushed open her office door, she saw him. Her direct superior, Vice President Matthews, was already sitting in her chair, his face a thunderous mask. The project lead was standing beside him, looking equally grim. "Mr. Matthews, what?" Megan's heart sank, but she managed a weak, professional smile. "Megan." Matthews slammed his hand on the desk and shot to his feet, his voice high and strained with fury. "Look what you've done." Megan was taken aback. "Sir, what? What happened? What happened?" Matthews was shaking with rage, pointing a finger at her. "Azure Cove. Our pitch. Our core creative. Our entire pricing strategy. It's all been leaked." This morning, 2 hours before our final presentation, Momentum Media walked into the client's office with a pitch that was practically identical to ours, just repackaged. And their bid was a full 5% lower than ours. They went straight to the top. "What?" The words hit Megan like a physical blow. She froze, the blood draining from her face. "That's impossible. No one outside the core team has seen the final." "Impossible?" Matthews let out a bitter, incredulous laugh and threw a stack of papers onto the desk in front of her. "See for yourself. This is Momentum's executive summary. Was the sky-high living concept your idea? Was the immersive lifestyle experience your core pillar? Was the three-act emotional resonance marketing strategy the one you pulled 3 all-nighters to create? And this pricing, it's perfectly calculated to undercut every buffer we built in. Megan, you tell me how this is impossible. Her hands trembling, Megan picked up the papers. After scanning the first few lines, the room started to spin. It was so similar. No, not similar. It was her work, her ideas, her strategy, just wearing a different skin. The concepts she had been so proud of, her secret weapons, were now slapping her across the face. It wasn't me. Mr. Matthews, you have to believe me. Why would I leak my own work? What would I possibly gain from that? Megan's voice cracked, tears welling in her eyes. It must have been momentum. They must have used some dirty trick. A dirty trick? The project lead sneered, his tone dripping with contempt. Megan, as I recall, Momentum CEO Mr. Peterson is an old college friend of yours, isn't he? And someone saw you having a private meeting with him last Friday night at the Blue Note Cafe. You were there for nearly 2 hours. Is that true? Megan's head felt like it was going to explode. Last Friday, she had met with Peterson, but that was because of Samantha. Sam had been crying on the phone about how distant Ethan had been, and Megan, trying to be a good friend, had met with Peterson, who knew everyone in the industry, to discreetly ask if Ethan was under a lot of work stress or if he'd heard anything. They had only talked about Samantha and Ethan. She hadn't said a single word about Azure Cove. I did see him, but it was for a personal matter. It was about Samantha. She tried desperately to explain. Enough. Matthews cut her off, his eyes as cold as steel. A personal matter? Megan, do you think we're idiots? What a coincidence. Our pitch is leaked days after you're seen in a private meeting with the CEO of our top competitor. Now the client is furious, accusing us of being unprofessional, even suggesting we colluded with Momentum. The project is dead. The company is out hundreds of thousands in preliminary costs, and my team's months of work are down the drain. Can you take responsibility for that? Megan opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The overwhelming feeling of being framed and the sheer panic left her cold and numb. She looked at her boss's furious face, the contempt in the project lead's eyes, and heard the hushed gossip from the main office. She finally understood. She had walked right into a perfectly laid trap. And the bait that had lured her in was her own misplaced concern for Samantha's drama. Mr. Matthews, I really didn't, she whispered, her defense futile. What you did or didn't do is no longer for you to say. Matthews took a deep breath, trying to control his anger, but the disappointment and finality in his eyes said it all. Megan, you're suspended. Effective immediately. Hand over your key card, your laptop, and all project materials. You will cooperate with the internal investigation. Until this is resolved, you're not to have any contact with company business or clients. Do you understand? Suspended. Investigation. The words were like 2 mountains crashing down on her. The room went dark, and she had to grab her desk to keep from falling. Her years of hard work, her professional reputation, the partnership that had been within her grasp. It was all gone. All because of one stupid party, because of Nikki's idiotic dare, because of Samantha and her endless drama. It was Ethan. It has to be him. Megan muttered, her eyes vacant. This is his revenge. He's so ruthless. Get out. Matthews pointed to the door, his voice devoid of any warmth or pity. Megan didn't know how she made it out of her office. She clutched a small cardboard box containing a few personal items. Under the weight of countless stares, some pitiful, some gloating, some merely curious, she walked like a ghost through the office toward the elevators. Every step felt like it was weighed down with lead. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing her off from the world she had just lost. In the small, confined space, Megan leaned against the cold metal wall and finally broke, sliding to the floor. The box tipped over, its contents spilling out. She buried her face in her hands, and a choked, desperate sob echoed in the silence. It was over. Everything was over. Ethan's revenge was precise, brutal, and aimed directly at their weakest points. Nikki's business, Chloe's marriage, Megan's career. All destroyed overnight. And the source of it all was Samantha and her goddamn bachelorette party. A toxic vine of hatred began to grow in her heart. The fear of Ethan and the resentment towards Samantha twisted together, threatening to swallow her whole. Samantha felt like she was losing her mind. From the day the wedding was canceled, her world had completely fallen apart. Ethan had vanished. He didn't answer her calls, didn't reply to her texts, and had blocked her on every platform. She went to his office, only to be politely but firmly turned away by the receptionist. I'm sorry, Ms. Vance, but Mr. Hayes has given explicit instructions that he is not seeing any visitors. She went to what was supposed to be their home, the condo at the pinnacle, only to find the locks had been changed. The cold, empty keyhole mocked her futile efforts. A polite but distant security guard informed her, Mr. Hayes has instructed building management that Ms. Vance is no longer permitted on the premises. Home was the only place left to hide, but it had become a prison of its own. Her parents' emotions had cycled from shock and rage to pleading and recrimination. Samantha, what on earth did you do? Her mother cried, her eyes red and swollen. Ethan is such a level-headed man. Why would he do something so drastic? Were you seeing someone else? You disgraceful girl, her father roared, smashing a teacup on the floor. You've dragged my name through the mud. We told everyone, all our friends, all our relatives. The venue was booked. Now we're a laughingstock. How am I supposed to explain this? That Ethan's family called it off? That they don't want you anymore? Dad, Mom, it wasn't like that. Samantha sobbed, trying to explain for the 100th time. It was Nikki and the girls. They were goading me into playing a dare. I was drunk. All I did was make a phone call. Ethan misunderstood, and now he won't even listen to me. A dare? A phone call? Her mother's voice rose to a shrill pitch. What kind of phone call? To who? What did you say that would make a man cancel his own wedding? Samantha, tell me the truth. Samantha froze, her face pale. How could she tell them she had cooed, I miss you down the phone? How could she describe the way she'd been sitting on a stranger's lap? Her silence was taken as an admission of guilt. The disappointment and anger in her parents' eyes washed over her like a freezing wave. Get out of my sight. Go to your room. I don't have a daughter so shameless, her father yelled, pointing a trembling finger toward her bedroom. Samantha locked herself in her room, drawing the curtains to block out the world. The air grew stale, thick with the smell of old food and dried tears. She huddled in the corner of her bed like a wounded, abandoned animal. Her phone screen was still on, opened her chat with Ethan, the last message she'd sent marked with a glaring red exclamation point. Suddenly, the phone began to vibrate violently. It wasn't a call. It was the group chat exploding. The one that had been silent for days, the small private group she had with Nikki, Chloe, and Megan. Nikki's messages came in a rapid-fire succession, dripping with hysterical venom. At Samantha Vance, you jinx. You bitch. This is all your fault. The IRS raided my cafe. It's over. My life is over. That bastard Ethan reported me. He's so cruel. It's all because of you. Why don't you just die? The texts were followed by photos. The official notice taped to her cafe's door, the trashed interior, and a close-up of the IRS warrant. Next came Chloe's desperate, tear-filled messages. At Samantha Vance, Sam. Mark is divorcing me. He showed me the recording and the picture. He's leaving me, taking the house. I have nothing left. Are you happy now? It was all because of that stupid game. Nikki, this is your fault. It was your idea. Samantha, why didn't you just say no? Why did you have to play along? You've ruined all of us. Megan's texts were cold, infused with a deep, repressed hatred. Samantha, I was suspended from my job. The Azure Cove project is dead. The company thinks I leaked the pitch. I'm being blamed for millions in losses. My career is completely destroyed. And it all happened because I met with Peterson that night to ask about Ethan, because I was trying to help you. He used it against me. Samantha, you're some friend. Have you felt Ethan's revenge yet? All of us are paying the price for your stupidity and your recklessness. Each message was like a poison-tipped whip, lashing at Samantha's already broken spirit. The accusations, the curses, the raw despair from her friends tore away her last shred of denial. This wasn't a misunderstanding. Ethan wasn't just being impulsive. This was calculated revenge, and it was brutal, precise, and fatal. Nikki's business, Chloe's marriage, Megan's career, all gone. Was she next? A massive, suffocating fear seized her, squeezing the air from her lungs. She stared at the hateful messages, at the picture of Nikki's sealed cafe, at Chloe's pleas, and imagined Megan being escorted out of her office. Her body began to tremble uncontrollably. No, it wasn't me. It was you. You were the ones egging me on. She whispered at her phone, fresh tears streaming down her face. It was Nikki. You wanted the dare. You took the video. You sent it to him. Just then, the doorbell rang. It wasn't a frantic knock, but a calm, steady, and insistent chime. Samantha, get the door. See who it is, her mother called from the living room, her voice edged with anxiety. Shaking, Samantha crawled off the bed and tiptoed barefoot to the front door. With a trembling hand, she looked through the peephole. Two men in sharp, dark suits stood on her doorstep. One of them she recognized, Ethan's personal lawyer, Mr. Miller. The other was holding a large envelope bearing the seal of the district court. Samantha's heart stopped. The blood in her veins turned to ice. Ms. Samantha Vance, please open the door, Mr. Miller's voice came through the door, crisp and cold. We are legal counsel from Mr. Ethan Hayes. We are here on his behalf, and with a directive from the court, to serve you with a copy of a lawsuit, a summons to appear, and an order to freeze certain assets. Please cooperate. Lawsuit, summons, freeze assets. The words hammered against Samantha's eardrums, and her final line of defense shattered. No. A raw, inhuman scream tore from her throat. She collapsed against the door, sliding to the floor as she clamped her hands over her ears, as if she could block out the sound of the doorbell and the cold, clinical voice from the other side. Outside, Mr. Miller waited a few seconds. Getting no response, he nodded to his associate, who pushed a thick stack of documents, stamped with the court's bright red seal, under the door. To Samantha, the sound of the papers sliding across the floor was the sound of a reaper dragging his scythe. There was nowhere left to run. The stack of cold, official documents that had been slid under the door seemed to suck all the warmth out of the Vance family's small apartment. Samantha's father, Robert, picked up the civil complaint with trembling hands. When his eyes fell on the first demand under prayer for relief, that defendant Samantha Vance be ordered to return the sum of $125,000, $125,000, to plaintiff Ethan Hayes, the world went dark, and he nearly collapsed. $125,000? He roared, slamming the papers down on the coffee table, which groaned under the force. Is he trying to kill us? Samantha's mother, Linda, snatched the complaint. Her hands went cold as she read the attached, itemized list. Schedule of gifts given in contemplation of marriage cash gift to bride's family. $50,000. Transferred from plaintiff's parents to defendant's parents on date to honor family traditions. Jewelry set, necklace, bracelet, earrings purchased from jeweler, total value $15,500. Receipt attached, given by plaintiff to defendant on date. Engagement ring, 1. 5-carat purchase from jeweler, value $30,000. Receipt and GIA certificate attached, given by plaintiff to defendant on date. Condo title and closing costs, for property at the Pinnacle, 1701B. Plaintiff as sole premarital owner, agreed to add defendant's name to the title, 50% share. Associated taxes and fees total $4,800. Receipts attached, paid by plaintiff. Wedding deposits and prep costs, non-refundable including venue deposit, $10,000, wedding planner, $10,000, wedding planner, $10,000, wedding planner, $5,000, dress deposit, $3,500, and miscellaneous items, $3,500, and miscellaneous items, $3,500, and miscellaneous items, $1,200. Total, $19,700. Contracts and payment records attached, paid by plaintiff. Significant personal gifts, in contemplation of marriage, including designer handbag, $6,000. And brand watch, $6,000. And brand watch, $6,000. And brand watch, $4,000. Total, $10,000. Total, $125,000. Every item was meticulously documented. Dates, places, amounts, receipt numbers. It was a cold, precise dissection of their relationship, stripping away any semblance of affection and leaving only a stark, transactional reality. The ring, the handbag, didn't he give her those things willingly? How can he ask for them back? Linda stammered, pointing at the list, desperate for a lifeline. Willingly, Robert let out a bitter laugh, pointing to a section of the complaint citing legal precedent. Look at this. His lawyer spelled it out. Gifts of significant value given in contemplation of marriage must be returned if the marriage does not occur. $125,000. Where are we supposed to get that kind of money? The Vances were a modest, working-class family. Robert had been laid off years ago and now did odd jobs. Linda was a retired teacher on a small pension. They had scraped together nearly all of their savings for Samantha's wedding, but it was a drop in the bucket compared to this. This is all your fault, you useless girl. Robert turned on Samantha, who was huddled on the couch, her face a pale, lifeless mask. All his fear and despair had curdled into a towering rage. You ruined a perfect marriage, and now the debt collectors are at the door. How are we supposed to pay this? With our lives? Dad, Mom. Samantha's lips trembled. She had no more tears left, only a numb terror. I'll go to him. I'll beg him. Beg him? With what? Linda cried, breaking down completely. Look at what he did to your friends. Nikki's cafe is shut down. Chloe is getting a divorce. Megan lost her job. Ethan is determined to destroy you and to destroy our family in the process. You think he'll even open the door for you? An atmosphere of pure despair settled over the small living room, heavy and suffocating. Just then, Samantha's phone rang. It was an unfamiliar local number. She stared at it, a cornered animal, too scared to answer. Answer it. See which one of hell's demons is calling now. Robert shouted. Samantha shakily answered the call. Hello. Hello, is this Ms. Samantha Vance? The voice on the other end was young, female, and strictly professional. This is she. This is the clerk's office for the Denver District Court. Regarding the case of Hayes v. Vance, case number XXXX. This is to inform you that the court has accepted the filing. A hearing has been scheduled for date at 9:30 a.m. in courtroom 4B. The official summons and a copy of the plaintiff's evidence have been sent via certified mail to your registered address. Please ensure you are available to receive it. Failure to appear without due cause will result in a default judgment. Please keep this line of communication open. Goodbye. Click. The line went dead. Samantha stood frozen, the phone in her hand feeling like a hot coal. She listened to the dial tone, to her parents' desperate sobs, and felt the entire world spin and crumble around her. The court. A hearing. A summons. Ethan had actually sued her. He hadn't left her a single shred of dignity, not even the possibility of a private settlement. He was going to use the coldest, most public forum possible to nail her to a cross and claw back every single cent. The cold terror finally consumed her. Her legs gave out, and she crumpled to the floor, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling like a doll whose soul had been ripped out. Denver District Court, courtroom 4B. The judge's bench loomed high and imposing, the seal of the state of Colorado displayed prominently behind it. The air smelled of disinfectant and old paper. The public gallery was mostly empty, save for a few grim-faced friends of Ethan's and Samantha's parents, who looked as though they had aged 10 years overnight, their backs hunched in despair. Samantha sat at the defendant's table. She was wearing a drab, ill-fitting dress, the only thing she could find in her closet that seemed remotely respectable. Her face was almost translucent, her eyes sunken, her lips chapped and peeling. Her hands were clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white, and a slight, uncontrollable tremor ran through her body. She couldn't bring herself to look at the judge, and she certainly couldn't look at the plaintiff's table. Ethan was there. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit, the collar of his white shirt crisp, no tie. He sat ramrod straight, the lines of his profile sharp and unforgiving under the courtroom's cold fluorescent lights. His gaze was fixed on the judge's bench or on the documents in front of him. Throughout the entire proceeding, he did not once glance in her direction. It was a complete and total dismissal, a cold indifference that was more cutting than any look of hatred. It stole the air from her lungs. All rise, the bailiff called out. The judge entered. This court is now in session. We will hear the matter of Hayes versus Vance. Mr. Miller, you may begin. Ethan's lawyer, Mr. Miller, stood up. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, his voice clear and steady. Your Honor, members of the jury, my client, Mr. Ethan Hayes, and the defendant, Ms. Samantha Vance, were scheduled to be married on date. On the eve of the wedding, the defendant engaged in behavior so inappropriate and contrary to the spirit of the marital contract that it caused my client extreme emotional distress, leaving him with no choice but to cancel the wedding and terminate the engagement. Mr. Miller paused, his eyes sweeping over to the defendant's table. Samantha's head sank lower. Based on these events, my client petitions the court for the full return of all gifts given in contemplation of marriage, totaling $125,000. He picked up the itemized list and began to read each entry aloud. His voice was not loud, but every word was a hammer blow against the hearts of Samantha and her parents. 1. Cash gift of $50,000. 2. Jewelry set, valued at $15,500. 3. Engagement ring, valued at $30,000. 4. Title and closing costs for $1,800. 5. Non-refundable wedding deposits, $19,700. 6. Significant personal gifts, $10,000. For each of these items, we have provided bank statements, purchase receipts, proof of payment, and signed contracts as evidence, he concluded. My client believes that the defendant's actions were the sole and direct cause of the broken engagement. The defendant accepted these gifts with the understanding that a marriage would occur. Now that her actions have made that marriage impossible, it is both legally and ethically incumbent upon her to return them in full. That is all, Your Honor. The judge turned to the defense. Ms. Vance, does your counsel have an opening statement? Samantha's lawyer, a nervous-looking man her parents had hired at the last minute, stood and cleared his throat. Your Honor, my client contends the following. First, the events at her bachelorette party were part of a private social gathering and should be viewed in that context. My client was intoxicated, and her actions, while perhaps regrettable, did not constitute a breach of the marital agreement. Second, several of the items listed, such as the ring and personal accessories, were unconditional gifts given during the course of the relationship and should not be considered part of a contractual exchange. Third, the costs associated with the condo and wedding planning were mutual preparations for a shared life. It is unfair to place the burden of their return solely on my client. We therefore ask the court to dismiss the plaintiff's claims. The court will now hear the evidence, the judge announced. Mr. Miller was ready. He moved with swift, logical precision. Exhibit A, a bank statement showing the $50,000 transfer. Exhibit B, receipts and photos of the jewelry. Exhibit C, receipt, GIA certificate, and photos of the engagement ring. Exhibit D, property deeds and receipts for the condo fees. Exhibit E, signed contracts and proofs of payment for all wedding deposits. Exhibit F, receipts for the designer handbag and watch. And finally, Your Honor, Exhibit G, the key piece of evidence, a video file recovered from its original source. Mr. Miller's voice sharpened as he cued the video on his laptop. The large screen in the courtroom flickered to life, displaying the scene that would haunt Samantha forever. The loud music, the hazy lights, and herself, disheveled and drunk, straddling a stranger while purring, "I miss you." Interphone. This video was sent to my client by the defendant's maid of honor on the eve of the wedding, Mr. Miller stated, his voice ringing with conviction. It clearly documents the defendant's inappropriate behavior during the engagement period, a behavior that violates the basic tenets of trust and respect upon which a marriage is built. It was the direct and proximate cause of the canceled wedding. He continued, presenting screenshots of Nikki's text messages. Sam said the mandatory rite of passage, and the group chat where Ethan announced the cancellation. He even presented text and call logs showing that the couple had not been living together, cementing the argument that these were not shared marital assets. Every piece of evidence was a nail in Samantha's coffin. When the video played, a collective gasp went through the gallery. Samantha stared at the floor, digging her nails into her palms, her body shaking so violently she thought she might fall apart. The shame was a physical weight, crushing her. When it was his turn, her lawyer seemed utterly defeated. We do not contest the authenticity of Exhibits A through F, Your Honor, but we object to their classification. Some were unconditional gifts. As for Exhibit G, the video, we object to its legality. It was filmed without my client's consent. It's an invasion of privacy, and it doesn't prove malicious intent. His arguments were weak, a flimsy shield against the mountain of evidence Mr. Miller had presented. He claimed it was a game, that she was drunk, that some items were gifts, but against the cold, hard facts, his words sounded hollow and desperate. We will now hear closing arguments, the judge said. Mr. Miller stood one last time. Your Honor, the facts are clear. The defendant's egregious behavior was a profound betrayal of the trust my client placed in her. The gifts he gave were not mere trinkets. They were significant investments made in contemplation of a shared future, a future the defendant herself destroyed. The law is clear on this matter. Justice and fairness demand that those gifts be returned. We ask that you rule in favor of the plaintiff for the full amount. Samantha's lawyer made one last, desperate plea. Your Honor, even if my client's behavior was ill-advised, it doesn't legally mandate the full return of these assets. The court must consider the fault of both parties, the fact that some of these funds cannot be recovered. My client has also suffered. The plaintiff's decision to cancel the wedding was rash. We ask the court to consider a partial return, or to dismiss the claim entirely. The arguments were brief. Mr. Miller's case was a fortress of logic and evidence. Samantha's defense was a house of cards in a hurricane. Does either party wish to pursue mediation? The judge asked, as was standard procedure. No, Your Honor. It was the first time Ethan had spoken. His voice was low, calm, but it echoed in the silent courtroom with the finality of a slamming iron door. He never once looked at Samantha. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She looked up, her eyes pleading at the man she was supposed to marry. The face that had once been so full of warmth and love was now a cold, indifferent mask. His refusal to even consider mediation was the final, definitive rejection. It shattered the last, microscopic sliver of hope she had clung to. The defendant is open to mediation, her lawyer said weakly. As the plaintiff has declined, the court will not order it, the judge stated, banging his gavel. This court will now recess for 15 minutes to deliberate. We will return with a verdict. The gavel fell, the sound cracking like a whip. Samantha sagged in her chair, drenched in a cold sweat. 15 minutes felt like an eternity. She watched Ethan and his lawyer walk calmly out of the courtroom, never once looking back. The 15 minutes passed in a blur of silent terror. All rise. The judge re-entered, holding a document. The air in the courtroom grew thick and heavy. Samantha's heart pounded against her ribs. In the gallery, her parents held each other's hands, their faces ashen. The judge began to read in a clear, authoritative voice. In the matter of Hayes versus Vance, case number XXXX, this court has reviewed the evidence and heard the arguments presented. He recounted the facts, the engagement, the money and gifts exchanged, the events of the bachelorette party. The court finds the video evidence to be credible and compelling. The defendant's behavior, occurring on the eve of her wedding, was a clear violation of the good faith and mutual respect expected in a marital contract. The plaintiff's decision to cancel the wedding was, under these circumstances, a reasonable response. The court also finds that the assets in question, cash, jewelry, property fees, and other significant expenditures, were given in contemplation of a marriage that did not occur due to the defendant's actions. The argument that these were unconditional gifts is not persuasive, given their value and the context in which they were given. Therefore, the court rules as follows. The judge's voice grew louder, imbued with the full weight of the law. The defendant, Samantha Vance, is hereby ordered to return to the plaintiff, Ethan Hayes, the full sum of $125,000, $125,000. Payment is to be made within 15 days of this judgment. Court costs are to be paid by the defendant. This court is adjourned. The final, sharp crack of the gavel echoed through the room. No! A pained cry came from the gallery as Samantha's mother fainted. Her father caught her, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his daughter with an expression of utter despair. Samantha sat frozen at the defendant's table, a hollowed-out statue. The words from the verdict burned in her mind. $125,000. Within 15 days, she had lost, utterly and completely. The law, in its cold, impartial way, had delivered the final blow of Ethan's revenge. She stumbled out of the courtroom, blinded by the harsh sunlight. As she reached the bottom of the courthouse steps, she saw Ethan and Mr. Miller standing by a black sedan, apparently waiting. Ethan finally looked at her. His eyes were calm, deep, and as cold as a frozen lake. There was no hatred in them, no anger. There was nothing at all. It was the look one gives a complete stranger. As if grabbing for a final, imaginary lifeline, Samantha ran toward him, tears streaming down her face, her voice a broken, hoarse whisper. Ethan, please listen to me. I know I was wrong. I was so wrong. I was drunk. They made me do it. It was Nikki. She's the one who sent you the video. I never meant to betray you. I love you. Please. After 5 years together, my family, we can't pay that money. Please have mercy. Let us go. She reached out to grab his sleeve, a gesture she had made 1,000 times before. Just before her fingers could touch the fabric, Ethan took a small, deliberate step back. The movement was subtle, but it created an unbridgeable chasm between them. Ms. Vance, he said, his voice flat and emotionless, loud enough for her approaching parents to hear. You have the court's judgment. He gave a slight nod, and Mr. Miller stepped forward, pulling a document from his briefcase. He held it out to Samantha. This is the official payment notice with the court-appointed account information, the lawyer said, his tone just as clinical. Please ensure the full amount of $125,000 is transferred within 15 days. Failure to comply will result in a motion for compulsory enforcement, which may include the seizure of assets and garnishment of wages. It will also be reported to all major credit bureaus. Please be advised. Samantha stared at the cold, official paper, the number $125,000 foot like a devil's eye staring back at her. Her final, desperate pleas had dissolved into nothing against Ethan's icy calm and his lawyer's procedural instructions. Ethan, you hate me this much. Samantha's voice trembled, a last flicker of disbelief in her tone. Over a stupid game. You ruined my wedding, you ruined my friends, and now you're going to destroy my family? Was it worth it? Ethan's gaze met hers for a brief second. There was no hatred, only a cold, piercing understanding, as if he could see through every lie and excuse she had ever made. His lips parted, and he spoke one word. It was not loud, but it was as sharp as a shard of ice, severing the last thread of their shared history. Absolutely. With that, he turned, opened the car door, and got in. The black sedan pulled smoothly away from the curb and disappeared into traffic without a moment's hesitation. Samantha was left standing on the sidewalk, clutching the payment notice as if it were a hot coal. The sun beat down on her pale, tear-streaked face. Behind her, the courthouse loomed like a great stone monster. The world went silent, leaving only the judge's verdict and Ethan's final word echoing in her mind. Absolutely. She finally understood. The fire she had started with her own recklessness and stupidity had burned down everything she had. Ethan's revenge had been perfect, total, and unforgiving. From the moment he canceled the wedding, the end was already written. And now, she was left with nothing but a crushing debt and the ashes of her life. The dust had finally settled, but it was heavy enough to bury her and her family for good.